Dead America, Tales from Las Vegas, The Boyfriend, by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. The darkness settled over the middle-class neighborhood in the southern part of Las Vegas. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale light across yards and driveways. It was just enough illumination for Oliver to see movement between the houses when he peered through the gap in his bedroom curtains. A figure shambled past the neighbor's chain-link fence, its gait unsteady and slow. Another followed behind it, dragging one leg as it moved. This was a typical occurrence these days, as more and more creatures shambled away from the downtown area and into the residential neighborhoods. The things seemed to follow some invisible current, drawn away from the bright lights and noise of the strip. Despite the zombies' presence outside, Oliver and his family never felt particularly threatened. Their house was solidly built, with high-quality windows that protected them against any creatures that smacked against them. This hadn't happened since the early days of the outbreak, back when the things still moved with that terrifying speed. Oliver's father had blocked the windows with heavy blankets during those first awful hours, concealing them inside and cutting off any visual lure for the creatures prowling the streets. The system worked. The house was dark from the outside, quiet, and gave no indication that 3 living people resided within its walls. While the 19-year-old Oliver knew they were safe inside the house, the same couldn't be said for his girlfriend Sophia, who lived a few miles away in a subdivision closer to the strip. The thought of her alone in that house made his stomach clench with worry. Unlike Oliver, Sophia was home alone when the zombie apocalypse broke out. Both of her parents worked on the strip and hadn't been heard from since that night. For the first couple of weeks, she tried their cell phones every few hours, always hoping for an answer that never came. Now, the only call she made was to Oliver, which helped keep her sanity. Their nightly conversations were the thread that kept her connected to something other than the isolation and fear. Oliver looked over to his cell phone, which sat on his nightstand beside the radio, as if he was willing it to ring. Despite a long, intense stare, it didn't. The young man looked at the clock on the nightstand, seeing that it was just after midnight. "Okay, I'll give her 10 minutes then, call," Oliver muttered to himself. The young lovers had passed the time over the last few weeks talking to one another, Oliver doing everything he could to keep Sophia distracted, not wanting her to think about the fate of her parents. Midnight was their final chat every night, one last check-in before fading off to sleep. The call coming late wasn't an unusual thing. Oliver knew that Sophia would get involved in her books, losing track of time as she escaped into fictional worlds that were often less terrifying than the reality outside her windows. He glanced at the clock one more time before reaching over to the radio and clicking it on. Mike's voice came booming through the small speaker, Oliver catching him in the middle of a sentence. It took the young man a few moments to figure out what was being said, but the excitement coming through was unmistakable. "And let me tell each and every one of you, I got a special album picked out just for this occasion. So, once I get done rambling, we're going to be rocking out until dawn, because this is a big step towards us taking back this city from those zombies," Midnight Mike announced. Oliver got lost in thought for a moment as Mike rambled on about the album he had picked out. The DJ's enthusiasm was infectious, even through the tinny radio speaker. Taking back the city? Mike's been hyping that up for a week, but did something actually happen? Oliver whispered. He shook the thoughts out of his head so he could focus on what Mike was saying. "That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And let's be honest, you degenerates who tune into my show, Captain Foster and his men have successfully retaken Nellis, and plans are being made as we speak to not only clear those things out, but to get help to those who need it," Midnight Mike said. "Hell yeah," Oliver said. He turned the radio up a bit, leaning forward to hear better, only to turn it down when his cell phone began to vibrate on the nightstand. The buzzing was loud against the wood surface. He grabbed it quickly, clicking it on once he saw Sophia's name on the caller ID. "I'm guessing you had a particularly good chapter holding your interest?" Oliver asked. Instead of the bubbly voice he expected, he heard sobbing on the other end of the line. His heart dropped into his stomach. "Sophia? What's wrong?" Oliver asked. "The back door gave way a few minutes ago," Sophia said. Oliver tensed up, fear overtaking him. He stood from his bed, his free hand clenching into a fist. "My God, are you okay? Are you safe?" Oliver asked. "Yeah, I made it back to my bedroom before any of them could get inside, Sophia said. How did it happen? Oliver asked. I went to grab something from the pantry, and one of those things must have heard me. It started banging on the door, and more of them joined. It didn't take long before the hinges started cracking, Sophia explained. Oliver could hear the fear in her voice, the way it trembled on certain words. She was trying to stay calm, but failing. But you're safe now? Oliver asked. They're inside the house, but I have my dresser in front of the door, and I don't think they can get through. But Sophia trailed off. The silence that followed concerned Oliver more than anything she'd said so far. But what? Oliver asked. I don't have any food or water in my room, Sophia said. Oliver muttered curses under his breath as terror gripped him. His mind raced as he looked around the room, his eyes eventually landing on an aluminum baseball bat resting against the wall in the corner. The bat was a relic from his high school playing days, gathering dust for the past year. Now, it might be the thing that saved Sophia's life. Sophia, I want you to listen to me. I'm going to come get you, Oliver said. Oliver, no, you'll just... Sophia started. Oliver interrupted her, his voice firm. Sophia, I am coming to get you. I don't want to survive the zombie apocalypse unless you're by my side, Oliver said. Sophia could hear the conviction in his voice and knew there wasn't anything she could say that would sway him. He'd made up his mind, and she knew how stubborn he could be when he set himself to something. Please be careful, Sophia said. I will. Just stay put. I'll be there soon, Oliver said. I love you, Oliver, Sophia said. I love you too, Sophia. I'm coming, Oliver replied. Oliver clicked off the phone, pocketing it as he leapt up from his bed. In a flash, he threw open his closet, rustling things around to find jeans and his high school letterman's jacket. The jacket was burgundy and gold, the school colors still vibrant despite a year of sitting unused. While a thick jacket wasn't exactly practical for desert living most of the time, any protection from the teeth of the undead was welcome. The leather sleeves might buy him a few extra seconds if one of those things got hold of him. As Oliver sat down on the edge of his bed to put his shoes on, his bedroom door opened. He didn't break focus on getting ready as both his parents walked in. He could feel their eyes on him, taking in the scene of their son preparing to go outside. What in the world are you doing? His father asked. Zombies broke into Sophia's house, and she's trapped in her bedroom without any food, Oliver said. He yanked the laces tight on his sneakers, double knotting them. And you want to go out there after her? His mother Helen asked. Yep, Oliver said. Oliver spoke with conviction as he pushed himself off of his bed, moving to the corner of the room to grab the baseball bat and a small backpack sitting on the floor. The backpack was from his high school days, faded and worn, but still functional. He slung it over one shoulder, gripping the bat in his other hand. You're out of your mind, John. Do something, Helen said. Helen began to get emotional, grabbing onto her husband's arm as if she was pleading with him to make Oliver stop. Her fingers dug into the fabric of his shirt, knuckles white with the force of her grip. A moment later, father and son stood eye to eye. They had a silent conversation, years of understanding passing between them without words. John could see the determination in Oliver's face. Eventually, the father knew his son was headed out, and that it was the right thing. Do you think that bat is going to be enough? John asked. John, Helen said. Oliver's father turned around, embracing his wife tightly as he spoke softly to her. He kept his voice low and calm, trying to soothe her rising panic. The boy can handle himself, John said. But he's safe here, Helen protested. And she's not. If you make Oliver stay here, you'll be killing her. Is that something you can live with? John asked. The mother continued sobbing, her face pressed against her husband's shoulder. After a long moment, she forced herself to shake her head. No. The gesture was small but decisive. I didn't think so. Sophia is family, and you don't leave family behind, John said. John looked back to Oliver, who gave his father a nod of thanks. The gesture said everything that needed to be said between them. Get into the pantry and get 3 days' worth of food and water for the both of you. I'm going to get you something that will help. Chapter 2. Oliver moved quickly through the house, his sneakers quiet on the tile floor, as he made his way to the pantry. He pulled the door open and scanned the shelves, taking in the well-stocked supplies. He grabbed a few things, the most lightweight stuff he could find. Protein bars went into the backpack first, followed by bottles of water that he distributed carefully to balance the weight. A container of electrolyte powder joined them, something his father had insisted on keeping around. Nothing fancy, just basic nutrition to get them by for a few days. Every item was calculated, necessary. Weight mattered when you were moving on foot through zombie-infested streets. As he loaded up his bag, his parents walked into the kitchen. John was carrying a small military canvas bag that he dropped on the table with a heavy thud. The sound of metal hitting wood echoed through the quiet room. He went through it quickly, his hands moving with purpose as he pushed aside other items until he found what he was looking for. When his fingers closed around it, he pulled out a large combat knife. "Here, take this," John said. Oliver took the blade, removing it from the leather sheath and giving it a once-over. The weapon was substantial, the kind of knife designed for more than just cutting rope. As he turned it in his hands, he noticed that some blood stained the hilt. The dark marks were old but visible, telling a story he'd never heard. "Where did this come from?" Oliver asked. "It was your grandfather's back when he was in the service. It got him home safe, and I don't see why it can't do the same for you," John said. Oliver nodded, taking a moment to secure the blade sheath to his belt. The leather was worn smooth from years of use, and the weight of it felt solid against his hip. He tested it once, making sure it wouldn't slip or bounce when he moved. Satisfied, he slid the knife home and secured his backpack, grabbing his bat before making his way towards the front door. "No, go out the back," John said. Oliver stopped, turning to face his father with confusion on his face. "But Sophia's place is the other way," Oliver said. "I know it is, but you're going to have to take the long way around," John replied. Oliver stopped and thought for a moment, tracing the steps to get to Sophia's house in his mind. He pictured the streets, the main roads, the shortcuts he'd normally take. Then it clicked. He immediately nodded when he got onto the same thought process as his father. "This probably isn't the best time to go by a supercenter, is it?" Oliver asked. John cracked a smile, patting his son on the shoulder as he guided him towards the back door. The gesture was reassuring, proud even. Helen continued freaking out behind them, her breathing quick and shallow. "You're going to send him on foot? Just give him the keys to the car," Helen said. "You've been listening to Midnight Mike just like I have. Driving is a lot more dangerous than going on foot," Oliver said. "The boy's right. The engine noise will pull hordes of them over, and we both know that car is barely holding together as it is," John added. The sedan in their driveway had been on its last legs before the outbreak. A blown head gasket or transmission failure would mean certain death out there among the creatures. "I'll be all right, I promise," Oliver said. "John, at least go with him," Helen pleaded. John stopped, turning to his wife and speaking softly, trying to calm her down. He took her hands in his voice gentle but firm. "Helen, this boy is an all-county athlete. The last time I ran more than 30 yards, he was little more than a gleam in my eye," John said. "Dad's right, he'd just slow me down," Oliver said. Rather than respond negatively to the comment, John got eye to eye with Oliver, grabbing him by the shoulders and speaking forcefully. His grip was tight, commanding his son's full attention. "You have the skill to pull this off, but you're going to have to use your brain if you're going to survive," John said. "I know, Dad," Oliver replied. "Once you're out of here, where are you going?" John asked. Oliver thought for a moment, tracing his steps mentally through the neighborhood and beyond. He pictured the landmarks, the fences he'd need to climb, the yards he'd need to cross. After a few seconds, he nodded confidently. "I'm going out the back of the neighborhood, over by that strip mall. I can cut over and get to Sophia's neighborhood from there. Should be about 3 miles, give or take," Oliver said. John got a smile, nodding with approval. His son had paid attention, had learned to think tactically without even realizing it. "That's the way I'd go too," John said. John pulled his son tight, giving him an embrace that lasted several heartbeats before pushing him toward the door. The hug said everything that words couldn't. "Get a move on. The darkness is your friend. You don't want to be caught out there once the sun comes up," John said. "I'll call you as soon as we're somewhere safe," Oliver promised. John nodded and opened the back door for Oliver, who quickly slipped out into the fenced-in backyard. The air outside was cool against his face, a contrast to the warmth of the house. He glanced back just in time to see his father shutting the door quietly and securing it. Then the door was closed, and he was alone. Oliver took a moment to allow his eyes to adjust to the darkness. The moon wasn't too bright, but it was good enough to see across the yard. Shadows stretched from the patio furniture and the shed in the corner, creating dark pockets that could hide anything. He moved over to the back wooden fence, checking the next yard through a gap in the boards to see it was clear before gripping the top rail and pulling himself over. The fence creaked slightly under his weight, but held. He dropped into the neighbor's yard, landing in a crouch with the bat ready. Nothing moved. The yard was empty except for a rusted barbecue and some lawn chairs scattered around a dead patch of grass. Oliver moved through the yard quickly, getting close to the gate that led to the front, when he was startled by something smacking against the glass from inside of the house. The sound was sudden and violent, glass rattling in the frame. He looked over, spotting a decaying zombie inside, pawing at him through the sliding door. Its hands left smears on the glass, its mouth opening and closing in silent hunger. The creature's face was pressed against the door, features distorted by the pressure. He shook it off, turning his attention back to the gate. He flicked the release mechanism and pushed through it, the metal hinges squeaking slightly. As he got to the front of the house, he spotted two creatures just to his left, looking around for the source of the noise. Their heads swiveled slowly, searching. Oliver stepped out a little too far and was spotted by one of the ghouls. Their eyes met for a split second before the thing's face changed, recognition of prey triggering something in its dead brain. The zombie moaned and shambled towards him. Oliver hesitated for a moment, the first time he'd ever been face to face with a zombie outside the safety of a window. All the preparation, all the conversations about what he'd do in this situation, and now his mind went blank. He watched it move slowly towards him, arms outstretched and mouth hanging open. Moonlight caught on its teeth. Then he snapped out of it and moved. He used the bat effectively, swinging it in a tight arc that connected with the side of the creature's skull. The aluminum rang out with a dull thunk, and the zombie's head caved in. Dark fluid sprayed across the grass. The thing dropped like a puppet with cut strings. As it crumpled to the ground, he turned his attention to the other one. This time, there was no hesitation. He rushed over and delivered another killing strike with his bat, catching it square in the temple. It went down just as fast. "That wasn't so hard," Oliver said. Oliver was pleased with himself, adrenaline pumping through his veins and making him feel invincible. However, it was short-lived as moaning from the street reached his ears. The sound was multiple voices, a chorus of the dead. He turned to see a dozen ghouls wandering through the light of a street lamp, drawn to the noise he had made. They were moving in his direction, their shambling forms creating long shadows on the pavement. "I really need to quit talking," Oliver muttered. Oliver shook his head and picked up the pace, running across the yard to the road. His sneakers hit asphalt as he went straight across it into the next yard. The street was wider than it looked, and he felt exposed in the open space. Before he could get to the house on the other side, more moaning came from the backyard. 4 more creatures were coming around from behind the house, cutting off that route. Oliver hesitated for a moment, thinking about attacking, but opting to run instead. He was fast, but he wasn't invincible. Taking on 4 at once was suicide. He turned to his right, pumping his legs hard as the zombies from the street behind him continued pursuit. His Letterman jacket felt heavy now, restricting his movement slightly, but he didn't dare take it off. He kept his movements quick but light, trying to minimize his noise as the moaning behind him continued to intensify. More voices joined the chorus, pulled from other yards and houses by the commotion. As he got a few more houses up, a handful of zombies came into view ahead of him, drawn to the noise. They were stumbling out from between 2 houses, blocking his path forward. Oliver stopped dead in his tracks. He was surrounded on 3 sides, with more creatures closing in by the second. He looked around to get his bearings, still a couple of blocks away from the end of the neighborhood, too far to make a run for it. He looked to his left, spotting a single-story house with a fenced-in backyard. The fence was tall, wooden, and solid-looking. "Time to reset this," Oliver said. Oliver rushed over to the front of the house, noticing that there weren't any cars in the driveway. The concrete was empty except for some oil stains and scattered leaves. That was a good sign, or at least he hoped it was. "I hope that means nobody is home," Oliver said. He rushed over to the front window, cupping his hands against the glass and looking through. He didn't see anything unusual inside. The front living room looked untouched, as if nothing had happened since the zombie outbreak. Furniture was in place, magazines on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch. It looked normal, peaceful even. "Good enough for me," Oliver said. Oliver pulled his baseball bat back, planting his feet and swinging it hard at the window. The glass shattered with a sharp crack that seemed deafening in the quiet street. He used the bat to clear out the remaining shards from the frame, knocking away the jagged pieces that could slice him open. Then he grabbed the windowsill and pulled himself through. He landed hard on the floor inside, his shoulder hitting the carpet with a thud that knocked the wind from his lungs. He scrambled to his feet, gasping for air, and working his way through the house. The layout was simple: living room, kitchen, hallway leading to bedrooms. He moved quickly but carefully, checking each room to make sure he was alone. The house was silent except for his breathing and footsteps. No zombies, no survivors. Just empty rooms and abandoned lives. Once he realized nobody was home, he relaxed a bit. His heart was still pounding, but the immediate panic faded. He had shelter, he had a moment to catch his breath, and he had a plan. Oliver walked back over to the front window of the house, gripping his bat firmly. He used it to smack on the windowsill, sending a metallic ping through the air. The sound rang out clear and sharp, cutting through the moans outside. The noise quickly reached the zombies that were trailing him, pulling them over to the window. They converged on the house, drawn like moths to flame. He could see them gathering in the yard, pawing at the walls and pressing against the broken window. But they couldn't get in, not easily. The window was high enough that they'd need to climb, and these things didn't have that kind of coordination. "Well, that's 2 blocks down." Chapter 3. Oliver took a knee by the window, remaining within view of the zombie mob that shambled towards him. The broken glass crunched under his weight as he positioned himself where the creatures could see him clearly. He wanted to make sure they congregated around the front of the house, drawing them all to one spot so he could slip out the back. It took them a couple of minutes to reach him, their movements slow and uncoordinated in the moonlight. The first set of hands reached up through the window frame, grasping at air. Fingers scraped against the windowsill, leaving dark streaks on the paint. He took a few steps back, staying far out of reach, but close enough to keep their attention. The window was chest high for the creatures, and they were too dumb to pull themselves up. They just kept reaching, moaning, pressing against each other as more arrived. "Okay, now let's just hope the backyard is clear," Oliver said. Oliver moved through the house, his bat held ready as he made his way down the hallway. The carpet muffled his footsteps as he passed family photos on the walls, frozen moments from before the world ended. He took a quick look through the back door, peering through the glass at the small fenced-in backyard. It was devoid of creatures, just empty grass and a rusty swing set in the corner. "All right, let's get moving. A couple more blocks and we're at the strip mall," Oliver said. Oliver remained focused as he slid open the back patio door as quietly as he could. The metal track made a soft scraping sound that seemed too loud in the stillness. He slipped out into the night, the cool air hitting his face as he moved quickly to the rear of the yard. His sneakers were silent on the dead grass. He reached the back fence and carefully looked over it at the next yard. 3 creatures were wandering about, their forms dark against the lighter backdrop of the house. None of them were close to the fence, instead moving in aimless circles near the back patio. He watched them for a moment, studying their patterns. He looked around at his side of the fence, spotting some rocks that were nestled around some plants near the base. Decorative landscaping that was about to serve a new purpose. Oliver grabbed a handful, the stones cool and smooth in his palm. He moved over to the back corner of the fence and threw one as hard as he could towards the left side of the house. His aim was spot on, the rock smacking into the side of a small outbuilding. The metallic ping echoed throughout the night air, sharp and clear. Oliver ducked back down behind the fence, pressing himself against the wood and looking through one of the slats. The 3 zombies shambled towards the noise, their attention completely captured by the sound. They moved past the patio and around the corner, following the promise of prey. The diversion worked well, so he grabbed a few more rocks from the ground, shoving them into his Letterman's jacket pocket before gripping the top of the fence and pulling himself over. The teenager moved swiftly across the yard, keeping his footsteps light as he went to the opposite side of the house from the distracted ghouls. The grass was longer here, unkempt, and it helped muffle his movement. He could hear the zombies on the other side of the house, still investigating the noise, their moans floating through the air. Oliver came around the side of the house, moving at near full speed with his head down and focused on the gate ahead. He didn't see the creature standing in the shadows until it was too late. He smacked right into its chest, the impact solid and unexpected. The collision sent both of them tumbling to the ground, Oliver's bat clattering away across the concrete. The zombie moaned in confusion, its arms flailing as it tried to grab him. Oliver quickly drew the knife from its sheath, the blade sliding free with a whisper of leather. He crawled over the creature as it tried to get back up, driving the knife forcefully into the back of the zombie's head. The blade punched through bone with a wet crunch, and the thing went still beneath him. Dark fluid pooled on the concrete. The young man breathed heavily as he frantically looked around, his heart hammering in his chest. He was hoping that the noise he just made didn't attract more attention. His eyes scanned the shadows, the corners. Anywhere, something could be lurking. Much to his relief, nothing else appeared. The 3 zombies he'd distracted were still around the other side of the house, and the street beyond the yard remained quiet. Oliver yanked the blade free, wiping it quickly on the creature's shirt before sheathing it. The weapon had proven itself, just like it had for his grandfather all those years ago. He grabbed his bat from where it had rolled and moved to the front of the house, taking a moment to compose himself. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He looked to the street, seeing that it was mostly empty of creatures. Only a smattering of them were visible a few houses down on the left, their forms illuminated by a street lamp. Oliver strolled across the grass, conserving his energy as he reached the street. Running full speed the whole way would exhaust him before he reached Sophia. He made sure to cross in a darkened area, away from the streetlight, keeping to the shadows between the pools of illumination. The few zombies down the road didn't notice him, their attention focused elsewhere. As he approached the next house, he made sure to take his time, moving carefully and checking his angles before advancing. He wasn't going to repeat that last, unexpected encounter with a creature. That had been too close, and he'd been lucky the knife was sharp and ready. Next time, he might not be so fortunate. Much to his surprise and relief, he navigated the next block without incident. The zombies were virtually non-existent on that street, just empty houses and parked cars. It was almost eerie how quiet it was, like the creatures had all migrated somewhere else. As he approached the end of the neighborhood, however, it became clear where they had gone. A growing chorus of moans filled the air, coming from the direction of the strip mall ahead. The sound was like nothing he'd heard before, dozens of voices creating a wall of noise. Despite this, he continued moving forward, his grip tightening on the bat as he got up to the last fence at the edge of the houses. Oliver took a knee, pressing against the wooden slats and looking through the gaps towards the back of the strip mall. Several streetlights illuminated the area, casting harsh white light across the parking lot. What he could see wasn't encouraging. Dozens of zombies milled about, most of them focused on 2 doors that were open, allowing them access inside the stores. They pushed and crowded against each other, trying to get inside, drawn by something within. He looked to the left, where he could see movement at the side of the building, leading around to the front. More shapes moved in the shadows there, too many to count. "That's no good," Oliver said. Oliver muttered curses under his breath as he adjusted his view, looking to the right instead. He could see a handful of zombies there, 6, maybe 8, and they were spread out across the parking lot. The spacing was better, more manageable. There was room to move, to dodge if necessary. "To the right it is then," Oliver said. Oliver looked for some sort of cover, his eyes scanning the parking lot for anything that could hide him. He spotted a utility box 10 yards from the fence, right at the edge of the back parking lot. The metal box was large enough to crouch behind, painted a dull green that would help it blend into the darkness. "All right, here goes nothing," Oliver said. Oliver hopped the fence, landing softly on the asphalt and moving up quietly to the makeshift cover. His sneakers found every small piece of gravel, each sound making him wince. He took a knee behind the utility box, digging through his pocket for a rock. The stones rattled slightly as he pulled one free. Once he was confident none of the ghouls were looking in his direction, he popped up from behind the box, letting the rock fly with a strong throw. The stone flew through the air in a high arc, clattering to the ground to the left of the mob. The noise echoed off the building, and several ghouls took notice. They turned toward the sound, shambling towards it with renewed purpose. Others followed, pulled along by the movement of their companions. Oliver didn't let the opportunity go to waste, emerging from cover and running as softly as he could on the pavement. Despite his best efforts, his footfalls carried across the empty parking lot, reaching the decaying ears of a few of the ghouls. Their heads turned, tracking him as he moved. It didn't matter, however, as he had more than enough of a lead on them. They were too slow, too far away to be a real threat. He turned his attention to the zombies in front of him, which were all converging on his position now. The young man picked up the pace, his legs pumping as he closed the distance. He swung his bat at the head of one creature as he ran by, cracking its skull and dropping it to the ground without breaking stride. Rather than engage the next one, he sidestepped it at the last second, using his bat to hook its leg and trip it up. The creature fell hard, creating an obstacle for the others behind it. Two more zombies stumbled over the fallen one, creating a tangle of limbs and moaning. Oliver picked up the pace, getting to the side of the building and making the turn to the front. He ran hard, his breath coming in quick gasps as he got around the corner of the building. Then he stopped dead, his momentum dying as he took in the scene before him. Zombies swarmed the area, filling the front parking lot and the street beyond. "Jesus Christ," Oliver said. Oliver froze for a moment at the sight of so many zombies. There had to be hundreds of them, maybe more. None of them noticed him yet, but he knew it was only a matter of time. His presence would draw them like blood in water. "Get moving, man. Get moving. Sophia needs you," Oliver said. Oliver ran hard, like he was trying to beat the throw from left field, as he tried to stretch a single into a double. His legs found another gear, muscles burning as he pushed himself faster than he'd ever run before. In a flash, he was out to the road, which was something out of a nightmare. Zombies swarmed the road and nearby buildings, dozens of them in the light, potentially hundreds more in the darkness beyond. Several cars were wrecked in the middle of the street, a horrific pileup with a dozen cars or more. Metal was twisted and crumpled, glass scattered across the asphalt like diamonds. The vehicles were piled on top of each other, a monument to the panic and chaos of those first hours. Oliver saw movement in one of the cars, a zombified driver forever locked inside, its hands pressed against the window, leaving smears on the glass as it tried to get out. He shook it off once he heard moans coming from behind him. He spun around to see the horde in front of the strip mall had finally taken notice of him and were coming his way. The mass of bodies moved like a wave, flowing toward him with terrible purpose. Oliver turned back to the pileup, seeing that a handful of zombies were beginning to come his way from the other direction. He was caught between two groups, with nowhere to run on ground level. "Get on top of a car now," Oliver said. Oliver forced himself to move, running hard for the edge of the pileup. His lungs burned and his legs felt like lead, but he pushed through it. As a zombie reached out for him, he leapt up into the air. The creature's hand clipped his heel, fingers brushing against his shoe. Oliver stumbled onto the trunk of a sedan, landing hard against it with a thud that knocked the air from his lungs. He spun around, kicking at the creature below him before sliding back to his feet on the trunk. The zombie grabbed at his leg, and he delivered a forceful strike to its head with the bat, dropping it to the pavement. Oliver quickly climbed up onto the roof of the car, reaching the outer edge of the massive pileup. The metal was slick under his shoes, and he had to balance carefully. He could see the zombies coming his direction from the strip mall, and a handful more coming from the opposite side. They were converging on his position, drawn by the noise and movement. "Gotta wait for everybody to get to the back before you make your move," Oliver said. Oliver had a plan in mind, even if it wasn't a particularly good one. If he could get all the zombies focused on one side of the pileup, he might be able to jump down on the other side and make a run for it. As he stood there on the roof of the car, his phone vibrated in his pocket. The buzzing was unexpected, and he pulled it out quickly. He looked down at the text message from Sophia. It read, "I'm on hold with Midnight Mike. I'm going to tell him that we need help." Oliver nodded at the message, knowing that it was a long shot, but a shot worth taking nonetheless. Mike had been able to coordinate help for others over the last few weeks, connecting survivors with rescue teams and safe zones. But he also knew that a couple of teenagers weren't high up the priority list. The military and rescue workers had bigger problems to deal with. Oliver looked out towards the growing horde of zombies that were getting ever closer to him. Their moans filled the air, a sound that made his skin crawl. He could see their faces now in the streetlights, vacant and dead, but still somehow focused on him. I wonder if Mike could send some help this way. Chapter 4. Oliver stood at the back of the pileup, clinking his bat against the roof of the sedan. The metallic sound pierced the night air, barely audible over the growing chorus of moans from the mob of zombies shambling towards him. The noise rang out like a dinner bell, calling them to him. Despite the dozens of zombies focused on him, the young man remained calm. His breathing was steady, his grip on the bat firm. He'd been in pressure situations before, just not ones where failure meant getting torn apart by the undead. This is no different than the conference title game last year. The pressure is on, but you can handle it, Oliver said. Oliver paused for a moment before chuckling to himself. The absurdity of trying to compare a baseball game with a horde of hungry undead wasn't lost on him. One had college scouts in the stands. The other had creatures that wanted to eat him. Not exactly the same stakes. He shook his head, clearing his mind before continuing to talk to himself. "So, what's your grand plan to get out of this?" Oliver asked. Oliver looked around the area, stores lining either side of the road. Dark windows stared back at him like empty eyes, giving no clue what waited inside. However, the bulk of the zombies were behind him, drawn by the strip mall. He studied the area up the street, noticing that after the couple dozen creatures that were closest to him reached his position, the others behind them were scattered. They weren't packed together, which meant there was room to maneuver. Pull them in, get over the wreck, and then... Hell, I don't know, Oliver said. Oliver took another moment to get his bearings as he continued clanging his bat on the roof of the car. The sound echoed off the buildings around him, attracting more attention with each strike. This was the only part of his plan he was confident about. Everything else was improvisation. As soon as I start running, those things are going to be following, Oliver said. Oliver reached into his pocket, pulling out a couple of rocks and looking at them. The stones sat in his palm, small and inadequate for what he was facing. They had worked before, but this was different. This was too many zombies for a simple distraction. These are great for a quick distraction, but what I really need is a constant one, something that would keep them focused on something other than me, Oliver said. Oliver looked around, hoping that inspiration would strike him. The street was filled with debris, abandoned vehicles, trash scattered across the pavement. His eyes moved from one thing to the next, searching for something useful. Finally, something did catch his attention. A zombie shambled by the front end of a sedan on the outer edge of the pileup, its clumsy hand striking the metal antenna. The thin rod shook back and forth, catching the light. "These cars aren't going to run, but the batteries might still be good," Oliver said. He looked at the vehicles around him with new eyes, seeing them as resources instead of obstacles. "At least good enough to power the radio," Oliver added. Oliver turned around, jumping onto the hood of the sedan he was standing on. The metal groaned under his weight, but held. He looked through the windshield, making sure that there wasn't a trapped zombie inside. The interior was empty, just scattered papers and a coffee cup in the holder. Once he saw it was clear, he raised his bat high, bringing it down hard on the windshield. The glass cracked loudly, the sound sharp and violent. Spiderweb patterns spread across the surface, agitating the nearby zombies. They pressed up against the car, reaching for him with dead hands. One ghoul's fingers brushed up against Oliver's leg, cold even through his jeans. The touch sent a chill through him. He turned his attention towards it, and with a forceful strike, he put it down. The creature dropped away from the car. "Maybe I should move to a safer car," Oliver said. Oliver turned and jumped over to the next car in the pileup, which was surrounded on all sides by wrecked vehicles. This one was a compact sedan, wedged between a pickup and an SUV. The positioning meant the zombies couldn't reach him as easily. He looked inside through the driver's window, seeing that the driver was lifeless. A massive head wound marked where he had struck the steering wheel, blood dried dark on the leather. The body was slumped over the wheel at an awkward angle. Oliver knocked lightly on the glass with his knuckles, making sure that the body wasn't a zombie playing possum. Once he was convinced it was lifeless, that the thing wasn't going to suddenly lunge at him, he raised his bat high and brought it down onto the windshield. It took a few strikes for him to break through, creating a massive gap. The safety glass prevented outright shattering, instead forming a web of cracks that held together. But It allowed him enough of an opening to put his bat through. Using his makeshift weapon as leverage, he popped out the windshield. The whole thing came loose, and he grabbed it and kicked it to the side. It slid off the hood and clattered to the ground below. "Now we're in business," Oliver said. Oliver dropped to one knee on the hood, reaching inside through the opening and past the dead driver. The body was stiff, and he tried not to think about that as he fumbled around for the ignition switch. His fingers searched in the darkness, feeling along the steering column. "Come on, be there," Oliver muttered. He let out a satisfied grunt when his hand grabbed onto the keys. They were still in the ignition, right where the driver had left them in those final moments. He turned them, trying to find the auxiliary power mode. The key clicked through the positions, and after a few seconds, he could see the interior lights powering on ever so slightly. The glow was faint, but visible. "Come on, stay on for me," Oliver said. Oliver continued willing the battery to life as he reached inside for the radio. His fingers found the knob, and he clicked it on, tuning the dial until he found a station. Static filled the air at first, crackling and popping. After a few moments of adjustment, heavy rock music came through the speakers. The fierce guitar matched the intensity of the drums, the sound cutting through the night. It was Midnight Mike's show, the special album he'd been hyping up all evening. "That's a solid pick, Mike. Solid pick," Oliver said. Oliver bobbed his head to the music as he turned the volume up, as loud as it could get. He twisted the knob all the way to the right, pushing the speakers to their limit. The tunes filled the air, drowning out the nearby zombie mob. The creatures became agitated by the new source of stimuli, their moans changing pitch as they redirected their attention to the car. Oliver moved over to the next vehicle in the pileup, a large pickup truck. The bed was high off the ground, and he had to pull himself up. This one was still a couple vehicles away from the outer edge of the wreckage. He took a knee in the bed, pressing himself up against the back window of the cab. He minimized his presence, making himself as small as possible. He looked over to the zombies coming from the direction he needed to go, watching as they ignored him and moved towards the music. Their arms stretched out over the hoods of the cars, fingers grasping at nothing. They were essentially walking in place as they tried to push through the vehicles to get to what they hoped was a fresh meal. The music had them completely captivated. Oliver looked over the edge of the truck bed, spotting a bit of empty pavement in between three wrecked vehicles. The gap was narrow, but passable. On the other side of the next car was the open road, where a handful of zombies were still shambling towards him. They were moving slow, giving him time to plan. You can get through them without any problem. But where to go? Oliver asked himself. Oliver stared out into the darkness beyond the streetlights, mentally drawing a map to get to Sophia's neighborhood. He pictured the streets, the businesses, the residential areas. After some internal debate, weighing the risks and distances, he chose his course. Up 2 blocks and cut over to the left. It's more businesses, but they're smaller, which in theory should mean less traffic, Oliver said. Oliver tried to convince himself his logic was sound, but even he wasn't buying what he was trying to sell. Small businesses didn't necessarily mean fewer zombies, but it was a path, and he had to commit to something. Regardless, he forced himself to get moving. The young man hopped down from the truck bed, landing on the pavement with bent knees to absorb the impact. He stayed crouched as he moved up to the last car in the pileup, using it as cover. His sneakers found purchase on the asphalt, and he kept his movements controlled. He glanced over the roof of the vehicle, seeing that the area directly in front of it was clear for 10 yards. Open pavement stretched ahead of him. 2 zombies were in the middle of the road, both of them focused on the music behind him. They were shambling excitedly towards it, drawn by the sound of guitars and drums. He looked past them, seeing a handful more scattered about in the darkness, maybe 5 or 6 total between him and the next block. Manageable numbers. "Get moving," Oliver said. Oliver forced himself to get going, planting his foot on the bumper and bounding effortlessly over the roof of the sedan. The metal dented slightly under his weight, but he was already moving, momentum carrying him forward. Rather than go in for an attack on the zombies ahead of him, he used his bat like a jousting lance. He drove it into the chest of the lead creature, pushing hard with both hands. The zombie stumbled backward from the force, pushing it back into the other one behind it. The 2 creatures moaned in frustration as they tumbled to the ground, their limbs tangling with one another. Arms and legs twisted together as they tried to get up, but only succeeded in pulling each other back down. Oliver pushed on into the darkness, leaving the music and the horde behind him. Chapter 5. Oliver ran up the darkened street, his sneakers pounding against the asphalt in a steady rhythm. The sounds of the music and the horde faded behind him, replaced by the quieter moans of scattered zombies ahead. He took time to knock over a few creatures as he passed them, using his momentum and the bat to send them sprawling without breaking stride. One went down hard on its face. Another tumbled backward into a parked car. He reached the next intersection, the one he'd targeted to turn down. His breath was coming harder now, the adrenaline starting to fade and exhaustion creeping in. He took a beat, stopping at the corner of a brick building and peeking around it. His chest heaved as he tried to catch his breath. On the next street were a dozen zombies, their forms visible in the scattered light from the few working street lamps, 5 of which were close to him, within 10 yards. They hadn't noticed him yet, still wandering aimlessly. Past them, the others were scattered across the road and sidewalks, followed by open road as far as he could see in the darkness, which was only a few blocks before the lights gave out completely. "Just get through them," Oliver said. Oliver got himself moving, bursting out from behind cover. His legs protested but obeyed, carrying him forward with renewed speed. He rushed over to the closest zombie, swinging his bat like he was going for the fences. Every ounce of strength went into the swing. The barrel connected with the side of the zombie's head with a sickening crack, nearly ripping it clean off its body. The thing's neck twisted at an unnatural angle, and it dropped to the ground in a heap. Dark fluid pooled beneath it. Oliver barely broke stride as he swung his bat again at the next creature, hitting it in the shoulder. The impact sent it stumbling to the ground, arms flailing as it lost balance and went down hard on the pavement. Another of the creatures tripped over the fallen one, their legs tangling together as they both hit the ground. However, the other 2 standing avoided the obstacle, shambling after the young man as he sprinted up the street. Their moans followed him, but they were too slow to be a real threat. The creatures ahead were spread out far enough for him to easily chart a course through them. He wove between them like he was running bases, using his speed to his advantage. None got within 5 yards of him as he continued pushing up the street. Each block he ran down allowed another to come into view, the street stretching ahead like a gauntlet he had to navigate. He pumped his legs hard, his thighs burning and his calves tight, but even his athletic lungs could only be pushed so hard. The jacket was making him sweat, and his backpack felt heavier with each step. After the next block, he forced himself to slow down to a jog, which quickly became a mall walker's pace. His chest was tight, and he could taste copper in his mouth. "Come on, man, keep moving. You have to get to Sophia," Oliver said. Oliver kept pushing forward, getting up to the next block, which was at the edge of the business district. The character of the area changed here, the buildings becoming smaller and more varied. Several bodies lay in the middle of the road, motionless in the pale moonlight. They were scattered across both lanes, some face down, others on their backs. Oliver walked over to one of them, his bat held ready in case it was playing dead. He could see that the back of its head had been blown out, brain matter and bone fragments visible in the moonlight. The wound was clean, efficient, but he was unsure of how long ago that had happened. The blood looked dark but not completely dried. "Well, somebody had a gun at some point," Oliver muttered. As the words left his mouth, he flinched as a gunshot echoed in the distance. The crack was sharp and clear, cutting through the quiet night. His head snapped toward the sound, trying to pinpoint the direction. "Looks like someone still does," Oliver said. Oliver looked around at the nearby buildings, scanning for cover or a place to assess the situation. Most were locked up tight, metal shutters pulled down over storefronts. But he spotted one on the right corner that had partially collapsed due to a fire. The structure was compromised, part of the roof caved in. The others on the block were secured and dark, but the front door to that one was laying on the ground. The frame was blackened and twisted, the wood and metal warped by intense heat. He contemplated with himself for a moment about whether or not to take cover. The gunshots could mean help, someone organized and armed, or they could mean danger, someone trigger-happy and not interested in sharing resources. As another gunshot echoed through the night air, the decision was made for him. Better to be hidden until he knew what he was dealing with. "Just get inside," Oliver said. Oliver rushed over to the entrance to the building, stepping carefully over the fallen door. He looked inside, letting his eyes adjust. The holes in the roof allowed the moonlight to penetrate the darkness, showing that the fire had ripped through the boutique clothing store. The interior was devastated, leaving little salvageable. Charred mannequins stood in twisted poses, their plastic skin melted and blackened. Clothing racks had collapsed, metal frames bent and warped. The smell of smoke still lingered in the air, acrid and chemical. Oliver wasn't interested in shopping, only a place to lie low for a moment. He stepped inside the building, his shoes crunching on debris. He moved to his right and knelt down beside a brick column that had survived the blaze. The brick was blackened but solid, offering good cover. He heard another gunshot go off in the distance, which sounded like it was only a couple blocks away from him. The sound bounced off buildings, making it hard to pinpoint the exact location. As the echoes faded into nothingness, Oliver debated with himself. His mind ran through the options, weighing risks against potential rewards. "They sound close. You should go track them down. Maybe they could help you get to Sophia," Oliver said. Oliver paused for a moment, as if he was turning his attention from the angel on his shoulder to the devil on the other. The argument played out in his head, two sides of the same coin. But what if they're not friendly, or if they're not interested in rescuing a teenage girl? They have the guns, so they would make the rules, Oliver countered. Another gunshot went off in the distance, however. It sounded further away than the previous one. Whoever was shooting was moving, not staying in one place. That could mean they were hunting zombies, or it could mean they were running from something. Oliver's internal debate flipped back and forth several times, the pros and cons balancing out. The stalemate was broken only by the unmistakable sound of a moan coming from inside the store. In an instant, his focus turned from tracking down the gunman to self-preservation. His grip tightened on the bat as he scanned the moonlit store, trying to find the source of the moaning. The sound was faint but persistent, coming from somewhere in the shadows. The ghoul moaned again, but it was seemingly coming from the ground. The sound was muffled and strange, confusing Oliver. The young man got to his feet, keeping his bat at the ready as he carefully moved through the fire-ravaged store. His steps were slow and measured, testing each footfall to avoid making noise on the debris scattered across the floor. It took a moment for Oliver to hone in on the source of the moaning, which appeared to be coming from underneath a metal clothing rack. The rack was on its side, partially melted and fused to the floor. He approached cautiously, using his bat to lift the rack up slightly. He recoiled at what he found underneath. The remnants of a zombie was on the ground, the majority of its skin and muscle tissue burned away by the fire. What remained was charred and blackened, more skeletal than the flesh. The metal rack was seemingly fused to the ghoul, melted plastic and metal bonded to exposed bone. Its movement caused the creature to move, the rack acting as a horrible extension of its body. Oliver's initial reaction was to retreat, to back away from the nightmare fuel before him. But he didn't once he realized it wasn't able to do much more than moan. The thing couldn't chase him, couldn't grab him. It was trapped, suffering in a way that seemed worse than death. He looked at it with pity rather than fear. "I'm sorry this happened to you. It's bad enough dying and turning into a zombie, but it's somehow worse being stuck on the floor of a boutique clothing store," Oliver said. Oliver reached to his belt, his fingers closing around the handle of his grandfather's knife. He pulled it free from the sheath, the blade catching the moonlight. He held it in his hand for a moment, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Then he knelt down, pressing the blade up against the charred skull of the zombie. The ghoul's mouth moved slowly, faint moans coming out as Oliver positioned the knife. The jaw worked up and down, teeth clacking together. He took a breath and pushed down. The blade slipped into the brain through a crack in the burned skull, meeting little resistance. The creature's suffering ended, the moaning stopping as the body went still. Oliver yanked the blade free, wiping the gore from it on a burned jacket that lay nearby. The fabric was crispy and fell apart in his hands, but it served its purpose. He sheathed the knife, the action automatic now. He moved back over to the door, listening for more gunshots. The night was quiet except for distant moans and the occasional creak of metal settling. He waited a full minute, but heard nothing. No more shots echoed through the streets. "Well, that settles that debate," Oliver said. Oliver poked his head out of the burned-out building, looking both directions on the street. To his left, the road was clear for as far as he could see in the darkness. To his right, a few zombies wandered near the intersection, but they were a block away. He didn't see any creatures within striking distance. Okay, only 1.5 miles of neighborhoods to get through. Let's get moving. Chapter 6. Oliver continued moving through the residential area, sticking to the shadows and staying as quiet as he could. The last mile of travel had been relatively uneventful, encountering only a smattering of ghouls. A few here, a couple there, all easily avoided by cutting through yards and staying low. His confidence was growing with each successful block he cleared. The young man moved up to the last house on the block, which was just before a large 4-lane road. This was the final major obstacle before Sophia's neighborhood. He took a knee at the back corner of the house, pressing himself against the stucco. He peeked around the corner to make sure he was alone, scanning the side yard carefully before committing to movement. With nothing at the side of the house, Oliver turned his attention to the road ahead. He caught his breath as he surveyed the situation, his chest rising and falling from the constant movement. Sweat soaked through his shirt under the Letterman jacket, but he didn't dare take it off. The street directly in front of him had a handful of zombies roaming around, most of them focused on an abandoned car in the middle of the road. The vehicle's doors were open, driver's side hanging at an odd angle. To the left was a small horde of zombies a couple blocks down, maybe 20 or 30 of them, clustered around something he couldn't see. But to the right wandered only 4 ghouls a block down, spread out and manageable. Okay, the home stretch. Sophia's neighborhood is just on the other side of the road. You got this, man, Oliver said. Oliver kept psyching himself up as he kept his attention focused on the creatures directly in front of him by the car. He could see 5 of them clearly, none of them focused on him. Their attention was completely captured by the vehicle, hands pawing at the metal and glass. You can run right by them, Oliver said. Oliver dropped his head at the thought, shaking it to get himself back on track. Running would be faster, but it would also be louder, and loud meant attention. And then they'll follow you right into the neighborhood. Sophia's house is 2 blocks over, and you don't know what you're up against, Oliver countered. Oliver thought for another moment before settling on an idea, even if it didn't thrill him. It would take longer, require more risk up close, but it would keep things quiet. He needed to clear a path without drawing every zombie in the area. I don't know if this is brilliant, stupid, or brilliantly stupid, Oliver muttered. Oliver took out his knife, the blade sliding free from the leather sheath with a whisper. He took a deep breath to steady himself before lightly clanging it against the aluminum siding of the house. The metallic ping resonated through the air, sharp and clear. It caught the ear of 2 zombies by the car, their heads turning toward the sound. That's right, come get me, Oliver said. Oliver watched from the shadows as the 2 zombies broke off from the car, leaving the others behind as they shambled towards the source of the noise. Their movements were slow but purposeful, arms outstretched and mouths hanging open. Both of them stumbled over the curb, their coordination poor, but managed to keep their feet as they continued walking forward across the grass. When the 2 creatures got within 5 yards of Oliver, they spotted him in the shadows. Their moans intensified, recognizing prey, but it was too late for them. Oliver leapt from his crouch position, swinging his baseball bat like a pro. The first swing connected with the lead zombie's temple, caving in the side of its skull. It dropped without a sound. The second swing came around in a tight arc, catching the other creature in the forehead. 2 swings, 2 caved-in heads. Both bodies crumpled to the grass. As they dropped to the ground, Oliver looked out to the road, noticing that one more creature began taking an interest in him. It had turned away from the car, head cocked as if trying to understand what it was hearing. The young man strolled over towards the road, stopping a few feet from the curb. He stood there, visible, waiting. His bet paid off as the zombie shambled toward him and stumbled over the curb. However, unlike his comrades, this one fell face first onto the ground with a heavy thud. Its arms failed to catch itself, and it hit hard. Oliver made quick work of it with a strike to the back of the head, the bat coming down with force. The skull cracked, and the thing went still. Oliver looked both directions on the road, checking the situation. To his left, the horde was still clustered together, not paying him any attention. To his right, the 4 zombies continued their aimless wandering, None of the groups were focused on him. He turned his attention back towards the last two zombies by the car, both of whom had their faces pressed up against the doors. They were completely fixated on whatever was inside, or maybe just on the glass itself. Oliver drew his knife again, moving as quietly as he could on the pavement towards them. His footsteps were soft, deliberate, each one placed carefully to minimize noise. When he got within striking distance, he jammed his blade into the base of one creature's skull. The knife punched through with a wet sound, and the zombie dropped. He yanked it free and stabbed the other in the eye socket as it turned because of the noise. The blade went deep, finding the brain, and that creature fell as well. The young man yanked the blade free, dark fluid running down the steel. He moved quickly and quietly towards the other side of the road, not bothering to clean the knife yet. He glanced in both directions, noticing that only a couple of creatures down the street had bothered to turn in his direction. But they weren't in pursuit, just looking around confused about the noise. Oliver pushed into the neighborhood, hopping the first fence he saw. The wood creaked slightly under his weight, but held. He landed in a crouch and took a knee behind it, pressing himself against the boards. He wiped the gore off his knife on his jeans before sheathing it. The blade was getting a workout tonight. "Okay, a couple more blocks and you're at Sophia's," Oliver said. Oliver forced himself to get up, his muscles aching from exertion. His thighs burned, his shoulders were tight, and his hands were sore from gripping the bat. But he put the pain out of his mind, pushing on through the discomfort. Before he could get across the yard, his phone vibrated in his pocket. The buzzing felt urgent against his leg. He pulled it out and glanced at the message from Sophia. It read, "Call me before you get to my house." "Oh no, what now?" Oliver said. Oliver looked at the house to his right, seeing movement inside through the windows. Shadows shifted behind curtains, the silhouette of at least one zombie wandering through the rooms. That ruled out taking shelter there. "You need someplace where you can talk and not risk getting heard," Oliver muttered to himself. Oliver contemplated fighting his way into the house, clearing it room by room to give him the privacy he needed. However, he began smirking as he looked to the left, spotting an elevated kids' playhouse in the next yard. The structure was wooden, painted in faded primary colors, with a small ladder leading up to it. It sat 6 feet off the ground on sturdy posts. "That'll do just fine," Oliver said. Oliver hopped the fence, moving across the yard swiftly to the wooden structure. The grass was overgrown, brushing against his jeans as he moved. He climbed the ladder, testing each rung before putting his full weight on it. The wood was solid despite its age, and he got 6 feet off the ground into the small structure. The playhouse was cramped but serviceable, with enough room to sit and a roof overhead. He took a seat, his back against the wall as he pulled out his cell phone. His fingers were shaking slightly as he quickly pulled up Sophia's contact info. He hit call and brought the phone to his ear. Oliver remained tense for a few moments while it rang, each tone seeming to last forever. Relief came over him only after she answered, her voice cutting through the silence. "Oliver, are you okay?" Sophia asked. Despite being somewhat contained in the playhouse, Oliver spoke in a low voice. He didn't want to risk being overheard by anything lurking in the nearby yards. "Hey, baby. Yeah, I'm okay," Oliver said. "Where are you? And why are you talking so quietly?" Sophia asked. "I'm in your neighborhood, hiding in some kid's fort. I don't see any of those things around, but I don't want to give myself away," Oliver explained. "I know the house. I'm so glad you're close," Sophia said. Oliver began to respond, but paused when he heard banging coming from the other end of the phone. The sound was rhythmic and persistent, wood or something solid being struck repeatedly. "What's that banging? It sounds louder than it should," Oliver said. "That's why I needed you to call me. Those things, they're all around the house," Sophia said. Oliver froze up, not knowing how to respond. His mind went blank, the plan he'd been forming crumbling away. It took him a moment before he spoke, doing his best to remain hopeful and confident, even though fear was clawing at his chest. "It's okay. I'll figure out a way to get you out of there," Oliver said. "It's too dangerous, Oliver. I looked out the window and there's dozens of them," Sophia said. "Don't worry, Sophia. I'll get you out," Oliver insisted. "I don't want you to die," Sophia said. "I'm not, and I'm not going to let you die either," Oliver replied. Sophia began sobbing on the other end of the line, the sound breaking his heart. It was partially from fear, but mostly from the knowledge that she was putting Oliver in grave danger. He could hear her trying to muffle the sound, not wanting to draw attention from the zombies outside her room. The two of them sat in silence for several moments, neither knowing what to say. The banging continued in the background of her call, a constant reminder of the threat surrounding her. "Are you still there?" Sophia asked. "I am, and I'm not going anywhere," Oliver said. Oliver paused for a moment, his mind racing for ideas. He needed a distraction, something to pull the zombies away from her house, but nothing came to mind immediately. "Sophia, I need you to do something for me," Oliver said. "Just tell me and I'll do it," Sophia replied. "I need you to make sure that you're ready to go when I get there," Oliver said. "I can do that, but how are you going to get me out of here?" Sophia asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to get closer to your house to see what I'm dealing with," Oliver said. "Please be careful," Sophia said. "Always, baby." "I love you," Oliver said. "I love you too, Oliver, and thank you," Sophia replied. "I'll see you soon," Oliver promised. Oliver clicked the phone off, pocketing it before dropping his head between his knees. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, heavier than the backpack on his shoulders. He knew he didn't have a plan, didn't know how he was going to face off against that many zombies, but he also knew that he was going to try. Failure wasn't an option, not when it meant losing Sophia. "Okay, let's go see how bad this is going to be." Chapter 7. Oliver stuck to the backyards of houses as he worked his way across the neighborhood towards Sophia's house. He moved from fence to fence, checking each yard before committing to crossing it. The rest of the first block was uneventful. No signs of a single creature. The yards were empty except for the occasional patio furniture or forgotten children's toys scattered in the grass. It was almost peaceful, which made him more nervous than if he'd encountered zombies. Oliver got to the last house on the block, taking cover at the corner of the structure. He pressed himself against the brick and slowly looked across the street. He scanned the area carefully, his eyes adjusting to the varied lighting from the few working street lamps. He noticed a handful of creatures all moving in the same direction, their shambling forms creating long shadows on the pavement. He looked at the path they were taking, following their trajectory with his eyes. Just as he feared, they were all headed towards Sophia's house, which was 4 houses down, on the opposite side of the street. His heart sank as he saw what he was up against. The couple dozen creatures Sophia saw was just the tip of the iceberg. There were easily 50 creatures crowded around her house, presumably every ghoul in the neighborhood. They were packed together in the yard and on the sidewalk, pressing against the walls and windows. The moaning was constant, a chorus of hunger that made his stomach turn. "How in the hell did they all get over there?" Oliver asked. Oliver let his mind wander for a moment, wondering if the noise one of them made drew the others like a siren's call. Maybe the first zombie had attracted a second, which attracted a third, until the entire neighborhood's worth of undead had congregated at her house. After a few moments, however, he shook his head vigorously to clear it. Speculation wouldn't help Sophia. "It doesn't matter why they're all there. The fact is they are, and you have to figure out a way to deal with it," Oliver said. Oliver patted his pocket with the rocks, the stones clicking together under his palm. He knew that a diversion was most likely the best course of action, but what could he do that wouldn't risk pulling in more creatures from outside the neighborhood? The rocks had worked before, but not with numbers like this. Anything loud enough to pull 50 zombies away would likely carry beyond the neighborhood boundaries. And just getting to Sophia was half the battle. They still needed to get somewhere safe afterward, and he couldn't do that if he'd attracted every zombie within a mile radius. Oliver looked around, hoping that inspiration would strike him. His eyes moved from house to house, looking for something, anything that could help. Finally, something did catch his attention. The 2-story house at the end of the block, just across the street from Sophia's house. It was larger than the others, with a prominent second floor that overlooked the area. And more importantly, it had a fenced-in backyard. "This is your worst idea yet," Oliver muttered. Oliver shook his head in disgust at what he was thinking, but the more he hated the idea, the more he was convinced that it was going to work. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it could clear the area around Sophia's house long enough for him to get her out. With a grunt, he got moving towards the house, sticking to the backyards and keeping low. As he reached the yard of the house in question, he saw that it had a wooden fence around it, maybe 6 feet tall. The fence would provide him with what he needed, a barrier to slow the zombies down once he had their attention. He jumped over the fence, landing softly in the grass on the other side. He moved up to the back patio door, a large glass sliding door that reflected the moonlight. He looked through it and saw movement inside, a shadow passing through the kitchen. "Yeah, that figures," Oliver said. Oliver pulled on the door handle, finding it locked. The mechanism didn't budge. He then gave the glass a light tap with his knuckles, testing it. He could tell it was safety glass, like the windshield he'd broken out earlier. The surface had that same resistance to it. With a smirk, he raised his bat, positioning himself carefully before swinging it hard right at head level on the glass. He swung violently a few times at the same spot, the impact sending cracks spreading across the surface. After several hits, he managed to put a hole in the glass, just a few inches in diameter. The opening was small but visible, the edges sharp and jagged. The noise he made in creating the hole was more than enough to draw the attention of the zombie inside. He could hear it moaning, feet shuffling across the tile floor as it shambled over to the door. Oliver made sure to position himself right in front of the hole, his face visible through the opening. He was luring the zombie over to it, using himself as bait. As expected, the creature's head was pressed up against the door within seconds, right at the opening. Its dead eyes stared at him through the hole, mouth working as it tried to bite through the glass. "Can't believe that worked," Oliver said. Oliver stayed directly in front of the zombie to hold it in place as he grabbed his knife. The creature was fixated on him, not understanding why it couldn't reach the meal in front of it. With a quick jab through the hole, he pierced the eye socket of the zombie, the blade just long enough to reach the brain, and he felt the resistance as it punctured deep. The zombie convulsed for a moment, its body jerking as the knife scrambled its brain. Then it dropped to the ground with a heavy thud on the other side of the glass. Oliver gave it a few more moments, watching through the door and listening carefully. He was making sure that was the only creature inside the house. No more shadows moved, no more moans echoed from within. Once he was convinced, he swung his bat a few times at the glass closest to the door handle. He focused his strikes on a specific area, breaking it open just wide enough for him to slip a hand inside. Glass fell away in chunks, clattering on the tile floor. He reached through carefully, avoiding the sharp edges, and found the lock. It clicked open easily. Oliver slid the door wide open, the track squeaking slightly. He grabbed the body on the ground by its shirt, dragging it outside onto the patio. The dead weight was heavy, but he managed to pull it clear of the doorway. He wanted to make sure there was nothing there that would trip him up when he needed to move fast. "This is still a stupid idea," Oliver said. Oliver chuckled to himself, shaking his head at the absurdity of his plan, if it could even be called that. It was more like controlled chaos, hoping things worked out in his favor. But it was the best option he had. He made his way to the front of the house, moving through the kitchen and living room. The interior was untouched, furniture in place, and pictures on the walls. It looked like the owners had just stepped out. He pulled back the curtains at the front window and looked at Sophia's house across the street. The zombies were still swarming around the structure, mostly concentrated around her bedroom window. They were pressing against the glass, hands leaving smears as they pawed at it. "Don't worry, baby. I'm coming to get you," Oliver said. Oliver pulled out his cell phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. He typed out a quick text to her that read, "Get ready to move. I'll be there soon." He hit send and watched the message go through before pocketing the device. His heart was pounding now, adrenaline starting to flow as he prepared for what came next. He took a deep breath before opening the front door. The night air hit his face as he stepped outside. He walked out with confidence, the baseball bat resting on his shoulder like he was stepping up to the plate at a championship game. Oliver strolled out into the street, none of the zombies taking notice of him yet. They were too focused on Sophia's house, on the promise of prey just out of reach. He stood in the middle of the road and stretched his arms, raising the bat above his head with both hands holding onto it. It was a common ritual he'd done 1,000 times before an at-bat, loosening his shoulders and getting his muscles ready. After his routine was complete, he was locked in, ready for action. His mind was clear, focused on the task ahead. He raised the bat high with one hand before bringing it down as hard as he could on the pavement. The metallic ping filled the night air, echoing off the houses and cutting through the moaning. "All right, I'm gonna need each and every one of you assholes to get away from my girl," Oliver called out. Oliver raised the bat up and repeated the strike, the metal bat clanging on the asphalt with another sharp ring. His ploy was working. A couple dozen zombies turned and took notice of him, their heads swiveling toward the new source of noise. In an instant, they lost interest in Sophia, the closer prey more appealing than the one behind glass. "That's right, come and get me," Oliver yelled. Oliver hit the bat on the ground one more time as he backed away from the horde. The sound rang out again, pulling even more attention his way. He glanced over his shoulder, making sure that nothing was coming up from behind him as he moved towards the house. The street behind him was clear, giving him room to retreat. Oliver continued yelling insults at the zombies as he retreated into the house. He called them every name he could think of, keeping their attention focused solely on him. He stopped in the doorway, making sure they could see him clearly. As the first ghoul got within 5 yards of the door, close enough that he could see the details of its decaying face, he retreated back into the living room. "That's right, everybody get in here. Plenty of room for everyone," Oliver shouted. Oliver stopped in the kitchen, staying within the eye line of the first zombie coming through the door. The ghoul let out an excited moan as it shambled towards him, its arms reaching out. It was being propelled forward by the horde of ghouls right behind it, all of whom were anxious to get at the fresh meal. They pushed against each other, creating a bottleneck at the door as they tried to squeeze through. Oliver walked carefully out of the back patio door, stepping onto the concrete pavers. He clanged his bat on the concrete as he exited the house, the sound carrying back inside. As he got halfway into the yard, positioning himself where they could see him, the first zombie reached the back door. Within seconds, 6 creatures were on the patio, stumbling over each other in their eagerness. More were packed in the doorway behind them, with dozens more visible through the kitchen windows. Oliver held his ground for a few more moments, wanting to make sure the horde continued flowing into the backyard. He needed them all committed, all focused on him. "Move, man, move," Oliver said. Oliver rushed over to the fence, planting his foot and jumping over with ease. He cleared the top rail cleanly, pulling the zombies towards him with his movement. He stood there on the other side for several seconds, watching with pride as the zombies continued pouring out of the house and into the fenced-in backyard. They were filing in like a parade, one after another, completely fixated on reaching him. But the fence would keep them contained, at least long enough for him to rescue Sophia and get someplace safe. "Get to Sophia and get the hell out of here," Oliver said. Oliver's words forced him to move, breaking him from his observation. The young man ran hard towards the street, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. As Sophia's house came into view, he could see that there were only a couple of zombies around her window, maybe 3 or 4 stragglers who hadn't heard his commotion or were too focused to care. "Hell yeah!" Oliver shouted. Oliver's audible celebration was a little too loud, his excitement getting the better of him. The exclamation carried across the yard and street, bouncing off the houses. He tensed up once he realized what he had done, his smile dropping. He looked back to the house where he'd trapped the horde, and noticed a few of the ones at the back of the pack had heard him. They were the ones still trying to get into the yard, not yet fully committed to the fence. The ghouls turned around, their heads swiveling toward the new sound. They locked onto him quickly, recognizing the source of the yelling. They began to shamble in his direction, breaking off from the main group. "Go, go, go!" Chapter 8. Oliver remained motionless for a moment, staring at the zombies from the decoy house now coming his way. They were breaking off from the main group trapped in the fenced yard, maybe 6 or 7 of them, shambling across the lawn. More were turning to follow, drawn by the movement of the others. "Get moving," Oliver said. Oliver finally convinced himself to move, knowing that time was not on his side. He rushed out to the road, stomping across it with heavy steps that echoed in the quiet street. He glanced back over his shoulder to see the few creatures that were following him were pulling more zombies with them. The group was growing, snowballing into a larger threat. Oliver got to Sophia's yard, his heart pounding as he closed the distance to her window. The 2 zombies by the glass still weren't paying attention to him, too fixated on trying to get through to her. He drew the knife from its sheath as he moved, the blade sliding free smoothly. He raised it at the last second before reaching the first zombie, his arm cocked back. Oliver let out a grunt as he thrust it forward, driving the blade into the base of the zombie's skull. The steel punched through with practiced efficiency, finding the brainstem. The creature went limp immediately, its full weight pulling down on the knife. The momentum yanked the weapon from his hand as the body collapsed, and the sound drew the attention of the other zombie. Its head turned toward him, dead eyes locking onto fresh prey. Oliver took a step back, giving himself room to swing. The bat came around in a tight arc, making contact with the zombie's face. He could hear facial bones shattering under the impact, the cheekbone and jaw giving way with audible cracks. But it wasn't a kill shot. The ghoul fell to the ground from the force of the blow, landing hard on its back. It was met with a furious series of blows to the head from Oliver's bat. He brought the aluminum down again and again, putting it down for good. The skull caved in after the third strike, and the creature stopped moving. Oliver looked back to the road, seeing that the zombies from the decoy house were nearly across. They were in the street now, maybe 20 yards away and closing. He turned to the window, raising his fist and pounding on it furiously. The glass rattled in the frame under his strikes. "Sophia, we have to go! Sophia!" Oliver called. After a few tense seconds, his girlfriend threw open the curtains from inside. He could see the relief in her eyes when she saw him standing there, alive and whole. But that relief quickly faded when she saw the zombies trailing him across the yard. Her expression changed to fear. "Get the window open," Oliver said. Sophia fumbled with the lock for a few seconds, her hands shaking as she tried to work the mechanism. Finally, she managed to get it open, the latch clicking free. Both her and Oliver pushed up on the window, their combined strength forcing it upward, but it only opened halfway before stopping, stuck on something. "Why isn't it opening?" Sophia asked. "I don't know, baby, but you have to squeeze through," Oliver said. Sophia nodded, not wasting time with questions. She maneuvered herself into position so that she could put her legs through the narrow opening. It took her a few moments to exit the house, her body barely fitting through the gap. Oliver grabbed her arm so that she didn't hit the ground, steadying her as she came through. Her feet touched down on the grass, and she stumbled forward into him. She threw her arms around him, kissing him on the cheek as she held him close. The embrace was brief but intense, weeks of fear and isolation pouring into it. "Thank you for coming," Sophia said. "I'm not living in the zombie apocalypse without you. Now come on, we have to get someplace safe," Oliver replied. Sophia nodded as Oliver grabbed her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. He pulled her along as they ran out towards the road, leaving her house behind. They ran hard, hand in hand, hoping to put some distance between themselves and the small army of undead behind them. Their footsteps pounded on the pavement in rhythm, both of them pushing for speed. They managed to get a block up before they noticed a handful of zombies coming out from a yard ahead. The creatures emerged from between two houses, drawn to their footsteps, maybe 5 or 6 of them, spread across the sidewalk and lawn. They were cutting off the path forward. Oliver looked back over his shoulder. The horde trailing them by a full block was now in the dozens, far too many for them to deal with. The creatures from the decoy house had merged with others from the neighborhood, creating a mass of undead. He looked around at the houses to either side of them, scanning for options. No fenced-in backyards, just open space that offered no protection. Oliver let go of Sophia's hand, taking a step out in front of her. He readied his bat, gripping it with both hands and positioning himself between her and the zombies ahead. "What are you doing?" Sophia asked. "I'm going to take a few of them down so we can get by them," Oliver said. "Let's just get into a house," Sophia suggested. Oliver thought about it for a moment, giving the nearby homes a more serious look. It was actually a better plan than fighting through. Most of them still had cars in the driveway, which likely meant someone was home. Dead or alive, that was a complication. However, the one a few doors down on their left had an empty driveway. The concrete was clear, no vehicles in sight. The young man raised the baseball bat, pointing at the house with it. "That's the one. Let's go," Oliver said. The two of them started running again, getting into the yard of the empty house. The grass was overgrown, brushing against their legs as they moved. Sophia ran straight to the front of the house, cupping her hands against the window and looking through the glass to make sure it was clear inside. Oliver turned and stood his ground at the edge of the yard, watching as the zombies were getting closer to them. The ones from ahead were only a few yards away now. "I don't think anybody is home," Sophia called out. Oliver grabbed the knife from where it was sheathed on his belt. He turned and handed it over to her, the handle first. "Good. See if you can get the door open. I'll hold them off," Oliver said. Sophia nodded, taking the knife and turning to go to work on the door. She moved to the entrance, examining the lock. Oliver stepped out into the yard, his bat resting on his shoulder as the lead creature got close. He watched it approach, calculating the timing. The ghoul was a few yards ahead of its counterparts, shambling with arms outstretched toward him. Its mouth hung open, moaning with hunger. Oliver waited until it was within range, then swung hard. The bat connected with the side of its head, caving in the skull. The creature dropped to the ground in a heap, its body crumpling. The other creatures were just stepping off of the pavement, transitioning from street to lawn. They were tightly packed together, maybe 4 of them in a cluster. Oliver began running through attack ideas in his head, trying to figure out the best approach. He could take the lead one, maybe trip it to create an obstacle, but he never had the chance to act upon them. The sound of an engine roaring came from the next block, loud and unexpected. A few seconds later, headlights pierced through the darkness, cutting through the night like searchlights. The creatures quickly lost interest in Oliver, their heads turning toward this new, louder source of noise. The engine was drowning out everything else, and the zombies shuffled toward it. A few seconds later, a pickup truck slammed on its brakes just as it passed the house. The tires squealed on the asphalt, leaving black marks. It was as if the driver saw the duo at the last second and made a split decision to stop. 3 people in the back leapt out before the truck had fully stopped, landing on the ground and immediately going into attack mode. They used makeshift spears, long poles with sharpened ends. They thrust forward with precision, piercing the skulls of the zombies from distance. The weapons gave them reach and safety, and they dropped the creatures easily. One by one, the zombies fell, the spears finding their marks. As this happened, Sophia moved away from the door, abandoning her lock-picking attempt. She stood beside Oliver in the yard, both of them watching the efficient display. The duo walked over to the truck as the driver rolled down his window. There was a large man sitting behind the wheel, broad-shouldered and taking up most of the cab. He looked at them with concern, his eyes moving from Oliver to Sophia and back again. "I'm assuming one of you is Sophia?" the driver asked. The young woman cautiously raised her hand, nodding in response. She wasn't sure who these people were or why they knew her name. "I'm Sophia," she confirmed. "The name's Connor. Midnight Mike gave me a call, saying you were trapped in a house," Connor said. "Up until about 5 minutes ago I was, until my boyfriend showed up," Sophia replied. "The name's Oliver," Oliver said. Connor looked the young man up and down, taking in his appearance. He saw the blood spatter on his letterman's jacket as well as the bat in his hand. The evidence of combat was clear. With a forceful nod and an ear-to-ear grin, Connor motioned for them to get into the truck. "You two get in. The back's full, but I got room up here," Connor said. Sophia turned to Oliver, giving him a nod. The two of them quickly moved to the passenger side door, Oliver opening it and helping Sophia climb up into the cab before following her in. The seat was a bench style, and they squeezed in together. "All right, everybody in. We're drawing a crowd," Connor called out. The 3 people with the spears rushed back to the truck, jumping into the bed. They landed with heavy thuds, the suspension bouncing under the weight. Once secure, they smacked on the roof of the vehicle twice, signaling they were ready. Connor immediately put the truck into gear and began a 3-point turn, maneuvering to head back the way they'd come. They sped through the darkness, moving a little faster than they probably should have been on the residential streets. The truck's engine roared as Connor pushed the accelerator, weaving around abandoned cars and debris. But neither Oliver nor Sophia was going to question it. They were just happy to be safe, to be out of immediate danger. "Thank you for coming to help us," Oliver said. "It's really a good thing that you got here when you did, because that door was deadbolted. I wasn't getting inside," Sophia added. "It's my pleasure, but my help doesn't come without a price," Connor said. The young couple tensed up for a moment, worried about what that might mean. Their eyes met briefly, concern passing between them. Connor quickly realized their reaction and the implication of his words. He lightened his tone, letting out a laugh in the process. No, nothing like that. I'm sure you've heard Mike talk about what we're doing with the strongholds, right?" Connor asked. Both Oliver and Sophia nodded. They'd been listening to Midnight Mike for weeks, hearing about the plans to establish safe zones around the city. Well, I'm the ringleader, so to speak, and I'll be blunt, we need all the help we can get, Connor said. He paused for a moment, glancing over at Oliver before continuing. You look like you can handle yourself, and I could really use you at one of my outposts. It's nothing fancy, but there's a few beds and somebody who knows how to cook the food that's there. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think you're going to get a better offer tonight, Connor explained. Sophia looked over to Oliver, searching his face for his thoughts. He gave her a subtle nod, barely perceptible, but clear in its meaning. We're in, Sophia said. Good to hear it. Welcome to the team, Connor replied. Connor went back to focusing on the road, navigating through the darkness with practiced ease. Sophia grabbed onto Oliver's hand, her fingers interlocking with his. She rested her head on his shoulder, finally allowing herself to relax. He leaned over and gave her a soft kiss on the top of her head, causing her to snuggle in closer. The gesture was simple but meaningful, a moment of peace after hours of terror. Oliver looked out the window as they drove along, passing by hordes of zombies scattered about. The creatures filled the streets in pockets, some in groups of a dozen or more, others wandering alone. They reached for the truck as it passed, but were too slow to be a threat. For the first time tonight, he began to relax. His muscles unclenched, his breathing steadied. He was relieved that he'd managed to save Sophia and not get eaten in the process. Against all odds, they'd both made it out alive. The end.